The story of the Book of Esther is a miraculous tale of heroism that took place about 2,500 years ago in the ancient Persian Empire. In the capital city of Shushan stood the magnificent palace of King Ahasuerus. The palace was breathtakingly beautiful with marble columns, colorful mosaic floors, silk curtains embroidered with gold, and vast gardens that stretched to the horizon. Ahasuerus ruled over a vast empire that stretched from Hodu to Kush and included 127 provinces. In the third year of his reign, Ahasuerus decided to hold a great banquet that lasted 180 days. It was half a year of non-stop celebrations. The halls were bustling with people. The air was filled with enticing aromas of delicacies, and pleasant music could be heard in every corner. The wine flowed like water, and the guests drank from golden goblets decorated with gemstones. At the height of the banquet, when the king's heart was merry with wine, he decided to show everyone the beauty of Queen Vashti. But Vashti, who was a proud and independent woman, refused to come. Vashti's refusal angered Ahasuerus tremendously. His advisors, who feared that this act would influence other women in the kingdom, suggested that she be dethroned. The king agreed, and Vashti was dethroned from her position as queen and sent to her death. When King Ahasuerus' drunkenness subsided and he realized what happened, he began to search for a new queen. From all over the kingdom, beautiful young women were brought to the palace. Among them was Esther, the cousin of Mordecai the Jew. The Midrash says that Esther had a greenish complexion and was 75 years old. But Hashem performed a miracle, and she appeared young, with a grace that shone on her face. Mordecai, Esther's uncle, was a wise scholar. He sat at the king's gate. One day, he overheard two guards planning to assassinate the king. Mordecai quickly told Esther so she could warn the king about the plot. Esther conveyed the information to the king, and the plot was thwarted, and the assassins Bigtan and Teresh were hanged. Shortly thereafter, the king promoted Haman to the position of viceroy. Haman was an arrogant man who demanded that everyone bow down to him. But Mordecai, who was faithful to his Jewish faith, refused. Haman was furious and decided to take revenge not only on Mordecai, but planned a mass extermination of all the Jews. He convinced the king to sign a decree of extermination, set for the 13th of Adar. The rumor spread, and when Mordecai heard about the decree, he tore his clothes in sorrow, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city streets with a loud cry. He sent Haddak the steward to Esther, who asked her to plead with the king for her people. Queen Esther asked Mordecai to gather all the Jews and have them fast for 3 days and 3 nights. My maidens and I will also fast, so I'll go to the king despite the danger, and what will be, will be. After the 3 days of fasting, day and night, Queen Esther gathered her courage and entered the king's inner court, waiting anxiously to see if the king would extend his golden scepter to her. Luckily for her, King Ahasuerus extended the scepter to her, allowing her to speak. Esther, in her wisdom, invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared, and asked the king to attend another banquet the following day, to which he agreed. Haman left the palace happy and in good spirits, and then he saw Mordecai, who neither kneeled or bowed down to him. Haman was very angry and furious. He gathered his advisors and family members, who told him to prepare a gallows 50 amet high and hang Mordecai on it. On that night, between the two banquets, the king struggled to fall asleep. He asked for the book of records to be brought to him, and there he found the story of his rescue by Mordecai. Ahasuerus asked, "Has Mordecai the Jew been rewarded for saving my life?" His advisors told him that he hadn't been rewarded yet, so Ahasuerus decided to reward him for his deeds. And at that very moment, Haman arrived at the outer court of the king's palace, planning to ask the king to hang Mordecai. The king called him and asked, "What would you do for the man whom the king wishes to honor and esteem?" Haman was sure that the king was referring to him and said, "He should be dressed in royal garments that the king has worn, and ride on a horse that the king has ridden, and have a crown placed on his head, and one of the king's most important officials should lead him through the city streets, proclaiming, 'This is what is done for the man whom the king wishes to honor.'" Suddenly, the king said to Haman, "Excellent, you have spoken well. Do exactly that for Mordecai the Jew, and don't forget a single thing you have said." Haman was shocked, but he had to carry out the king's command. Haman dressed Mordecai, put on his shoes, and bent down so that Mordecai the Jew could mount the horse without effort, and began to lead Mordecai through the city streets, proclaiming before him, "This is what is done for the man whom the king wishes to honor." What a terrible humiliation! The Midrash tells us that on one of the streets where Haman passed with the horse, his daughter stood and saw a man leading a horse with someone dressed in royal clothes, sitting on it. She was sure that the one on the horse was Haman, and the one leading it was Mordecai. So, what did she do? She took a bowl full of waste and poured it from the roof of her house onto Haman's head. When she realized her mistake, she jumped off the roof and died. Haman returned to his house, mourning and with his head covered. And then the time came for the second banquet that Esther had prepared, where she revealed the truth. With a voice trembling with excitement, yet full of determination, she said, "My Majesty the King, if I have found favor in your eyes, and if you agree to let me speak my heart, I will tell you that I and my people have been sold and are facing death." The king, shocked and astonished, asked, "Who is it that dared to do such a thing?" Esther, with great courage, pointed at Haman and said, "This wicked man is the adversary and enemy." The king rose in anger from the wine banquet and went out to the palace garden. Haman realized he was in danger. He lay on the bed where Esther was, pleading for his life. When the king returned and saw Haman on the bed, he shouted in anger, "Are you also trying to take my wife from me? Take him immediately and hang him on the gallows he prepared for Mordecai." The king commanded, "Hang him on it." And so Haman was hanged on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. At that time, Mordecai was appointed as the king's deputy in place of Haman. Since the royal decree could not be revoked, the king issued a new decree allowing the Jews to defend themselves against their enemies. On the 13th of Adar, the Jews killed all their enemies who rose against them, 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman. In memory of this great miracle, Mordecai and Esther established the holiday of Purim. Eventually, Mordecai the Jew became the second most important man, after King Ahasuerus. He worked tirelessly for the benefit of his people and for the peace of all his descendants. The Jews throughout the kingdom celebrated their miraculous salvation and began the tradition of reading the Megillah, sending food gifts, and giving to the poor. The holiday of Purim became a celebration of joy and unity, reminding us that even in the toughest times, there is hope and the possibility for change. The story of Esther and Mordecai teaches us about courage, loyalty, and the power of faith to change destiny. Therefore, from a story that began with a terrible threat of annihilation, Purim turned into a holiday of joy, unity, and hope, celebrated by Jews all over the world till this very day.